as you guys can see, we are in a super boring location. We have some wheat over here. We have an abandoned trail over here. We have a boring person named Nargis over here taking a selfie because she has so much cool people online. And somehow we're gonna find out how to make this place look super cinematic. I think you've already seen that, so make sure to hit that like button if you liked it, and let's get into tip number 1. Okay guys, so tip number 1, I've said it before and I'm gonna say it again, it's foreground. Foreground is so easy to do and it can make your videos look so easily amazing. And you could do this anywhere. You could do it in a concrete jungle. You would just use concrete pillars or even get low to the ground to create the foreground effect. In our case, we actually use the weeds in the field to make the shots look a lot more interesting. And if for some reason you really don't think you can create foreground in the location that you're at, this is what I did here. I actually just grabbed some dirt and poured it in front of the camera to create my own foreground, to create that wind gust type of look. Also, if you're like in a forest, all you have to do is grab some leaves and throw them in front of the camera. Things like that. Identifying those kind of things in your environment will just allow you to create foreground on the spot. Or you could be crazy like me, and sometimes I'll just put my whole hand in front of the camera, or I'll start kneeling on the ground, if you guys can see my leg, and I'll start like shooting my camera from behind my leg, and it's like a cool effect either way, even though you think you don't have any resources to create foreground. And speaking of putting my hand in front of the camera, I would appreciate it if you put your hand on the subscribe button, and subscribe because I'd love to have you. And now moving on to tip number 2. This is gonna bolster your ability to really make a boring environment look cinematic, and that's going to be using textures to create transitions. And this really is a lot easier if you actually location scout or know the location beforehand, so you can identify the different textures of similar colors in the area. In the B-roll section you guys saw in the beginning, you guys easily probably could tell that I used the weeds to transition into weeds from a different perspective, and use the weeds to go right back into the ground and actually create that texture transition effect that you guys keep seeing. By the way, it's just a simple whip transition, and if you want to see those kinds of transitions and how you can creatively use them, I'll leave a playlist right here for you to check out for creative camera transitions. So just to reiterate, similar colors and similar textures. Even better, if it's the same texture and the same color but a different object, even cooler, and it's gonna allow you to create these seamless transitions to add more dynamic effect to the location and in the way you're displaying it to your viewer. Speaking of transitions, let's transition on to tip 3. And tip number 3 is going to be using elements in your environment or on your person as points of interest for your video. As an example, you guys saw earlier that I just ended up grabbing dirt from the ground and throwing it in front of the camera. That's one great example, and I took this a step further by using not just the weeds as foreground, but as something that the subject of my video, the girl, can use to interact with. And then you guys also saw that on my person, or on Nargis in this example, the girl, we actually use her wristbands as a point of interest to add more dynamic to the video. It's not just about the location, it's about what you can show off in the location, and that includes a person that is there in your video if it's not yourself. And another great example of an on your person element is the person's eyes. If they have really pretty eyes, well, they don't always have to have pretty eyes because you can make that really cool in video editing, then you can use that. And you can also use, for example, like a hair flip, or if they have a cool hairstyle, just basically bringing out traits of the person that you think is interesting. So the whole point of this last tip is to be able to identify things in your environment and get creative and manipulate them in a way you wouldn't normally use them. If you're able to do this for your videos, basically anywhere you go, you're going to be able to create a unique perspective, and 2, make things look a lot more interesting than they actually are. And that's just going to take your specialties, your skills as a cinematographer to the next level. So now let me reiterate the 3 tips and give you a 4th one at the end to kind of amplify everything that I just told you. So tip number 1, foreground. Foreground, easy to do, easy to make your shots a lot more dynamic. Get to it, but use it tastefully. Number 2, it's gonna be texture transitions, being able to identify similar colors, similar textures, similar whatever in your environment to use for transitions to make your videos a lot more dynamic and cool pretty much. And so tip number 3, which was probably the most important tip, and you should always keep this in mind, is being able to use elements in your environment in a creative way, just so that your videos come out in a whole new perspective. It adds a whole new dynamic, and it gives you more to film in your location. And so number four, this little bonus tip that's really gonna take you to the next level is gonna be drones. So if you have a drone, it's always good to have a drone shot because that's just a whole new level of perspective. And even more important than that, even if you don't have a drone to amplify the other 3 tips, you can actually just use sound design. Sound design is probably the most important thing because that's what makes your videos really come alive. You guys see it in my videos all the time. Even though it has nothing to do with what's going on in the video, sometimes I'll add these glitch effect sounds because that adds one, some sort of stylistic effect, some sort of signature to how you actually edit your video past the visuals, and then 2, it just adds a whole nother depth to it. So sound design, drones, if you can do it, absolutely do it. These tips should make you, this is probably a line I should put on a shirt or something, but these tips should make you more creative, not just behind the camera, but in your environment. So keep that in mind. That's the goal, not to just be creative behind the camera, but also in your environment. Anyway, what the hell? Anyways, guys, I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Take care, peace. I appreciate every one of you. Subscribe, don't forget to like the video, all that good jazz. Boom, boom, boom.